We've got apologies from Councillor Stewart, Councillor John Walker, Councillor Quacks and Member Taipari, Councillor Anai, who's actually on council business, and then we've got Councillor Watson, Walker, Cooper, Fletcher for lateness. So I'll move those. No, Member Ngamani's here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's why I just said Fletcher and stopped. And I also took out Lee.
Yeah.
So I'll move that if someone seconds that. Yep. Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried.
Madam Chair, can you just clarify, please? I thought the meeting lapsed because of the time frame.
No, we were using the clock up there, and we were a little bit relaxed about the time because we only started.
My phone says 9:18, both my clocks.
Yeah.
But we only started at about 25 to. And, you know, with the greatest of respect, councillors, every now and again, if we can get to a quorum, we will. 5 minutes with the amount of work that's gone into this is neither here nor there. I can understand people may be feeling that lapsing a quorum may make a point. However, for the greater good of council, it is not a good look. And believe you me, the way that it's reported will be that councillors couldn't get out of bed and a meeting lapsed. No one's names will be up in golden lights saying, but these ones were here. So I'd like us just to continue. Confirmation of the minutes.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know you do want to continue, and we have until about now. We've been outnumbered by staff, but I want to. We've just accepted the apologies. Have the GSAs received those apologies, or you've received those apologies? Because I think we've got to stop just
accepting them.
Just.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that too.
Okay. So we've apparently, Tam has told me we've had apologies from Stewart, Councillor John Walker and Councillor Quacks. Not on council business, just apologies. So standing orders say if those apologies, so I don't know, we've got these CSAs here? No? So have they given apologies?
One has to me and
Okay. So if the apologies have been given, standing orders say the apologies have been given. We may raise an eyebrow and have our private thoughts, but the apologies have been given. You can vote against them, but that's it. And the apologies, personally, I was phoned by Councillor Cooper saying, I'm sorry, 9:30 start had me, 8:30 start had me flummoxed. I'm running as we speak, and I understand Tam has had apologies for lateness from Watson, Walker and Fletcher. Councillor Lee.
Madam Chair, could I just tender again my apologies, and I hope they were relayed through from Democracy Services. However, the reason for my lateness is that I've been completely tied up for an hour in urgent discussions trying to head off the destruction of the Harbour Ferry Kestrel by the insurance company, and that's why I'm late. But I'll tell you something, given the amount of, speaking on behalf of people who are absent, given the long sessions the council has, whenever I turn on the parliamentary channel, I always think we haven't done that bad, to be honest, because there's hardly anyone in there when I turn it on. But thank you.
Well, can I clarify? You are not allowed out of the building. You have to be in your office or in the park.
Thank you. They're not in there debating and discussing the nation's business. I don't know where they are. They might be in the boozer for all I know.
They're in their offices.
Hang on.
Till
Okay.
10 o'clock at night.
We're here, which is terribly exciting that we've actually got underway.
Councillor Brewer's here.
So we will
Started at 8:30.
We will proceed. I'd like to acknowledge the councillors who were here on time. Councillor Wood, Councillor Webster, Councillor Casey, Councillor Crum, Councillor Cashmore and Councillor Penrose, and for the people who have joined us, warm welcome. So, declarations of interest. There are none. Confirmation of minutes. I'm happy to move the minutes. Someone second those.
Yes,
Councillor Penrose. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. petitions, there are none. Public input, there is none, and we'll discuss that during the course of the meeting. Local board input, our local boards are invited and warmly welcome to ask questions. Extraordinary business, none. Notices of motion, none, etc., etc. So, let's get underway, Mrs. Pirrett.
So, just really briefly, the report that you have in front of you in the agenda sets out the program that these information meetings of the Auckland Development Committee will be following between today and the 4th of July. The purpose of these meetings is to inform and make sure the councillors are up to speed on all of the issues that have been raised through the hearings process, so that when you do receive the recommendations of the Independent Hearings Panel in July, you already have the context and background within which to make your decision on those recommendations. They are not about providing new information or even debating the council's position that it took into the hearings. Those hearings are largely completed, and council's position at those hearings is a matter of record. So it is about information for you rather than discussing why we took that position into a hearings process. Unless there are other questions around the report, I will bring your attention to the coloured version at the back in attachment A. That sets out the topics that we're going to be focusing on in these sessions, and those are the topics that this committee back on the 8th of December last year resolved were the key ones you wanted staff to focus on when we got the recommendations from the panel. But it also includes some key milestones for the hearings panel, and also indicates when we will be shifting in from information session into more of a considering what are the decisions this council wishes to make on the recommendations of the panel. But I think what might be best is if I just hand it over to James and to John to take you through the presentation. They might address some of the questions you have when you read the report, and if not, you can ask us questions about the report at the end of the presentation. So James.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors, Madam Chair. I have with me today Ian Cowper, who some of you might be familiar with. He's in the back of the room there. He's one of our senior external legal providers who's been working on the unitary plan. I also have Karina Faison-Clute from my team, who those of you who've been in the unitary plan committee meetings will know. I know she knows Councillor Alf very well and his cookies.
Roman, Jim.
Yeah, right.
Are you talking about cookies online?
No, I'm talking.
He doesn't like cookies.
I'm talking about gluten-free cookies.
Oh yeah.
So those two have been involved in a lot of the detail, so they'll be able to step in and answer any detailed questions that you might have as we go forward. The reason that we're starting with the legal framework is that, as you'll all be aware, we are dealing with a specific legal framework in the unitary plan space. This is a new piece of legislation, and as with all new pieces of legislation, its interpretation is at times complex, at times problematic. We have this piece of legislation dealing with the unitary plan specifically, but it also interacts and integrates to some extent with the regular Resource Management Act provisions as well, which adds a whole another layer of complexity. So that's the legal framework that we're trying to work in and trying to explain to you so that you understand how the decision-making process in this context should be made. The intention today is only to provide high-level legal information based on the statute. I don't want to get into giving legal advice, given this is a public meeting. One of the reasons in particular for that is that we are moving into what could potentially be one of the more litigious phases of the entire unitary plan process. And I don't want to give advice which may come back to bite us on the butts eventually once you guys have made your decisions. So the first slide here is talking about the legal framework, the special legislation I've referred to, the Local Government Auckland Transitional Provisions Act. As I've mentioned, the content of the unitary plan, notwithstanding the special legislation, also has to meet the requirements of the Resource Management Act. An independent hearings panel was appointed to hear submissions, as I think you're all aware, and to make recommendations to the Council. The members of that independent hearings panel were appointed following consultation with the Council and the Independent Maori Statutory Board. So as you will be aware, there's Judge Kirkpatrick sitting at the top of the independent hearings panel, 7 members from December 2013, and then 3 additional members from 2015. The IHP, Independent Hearings Panel, is required to provide its recommendation reports to the Council by 22 July 2016. And in making those recommendations, it's constrained by the legislation as to the matters set out in Section 145 of the Transitional Provisions Act. I note there that the panel can make a request to the Minister for the Environment for an extension of up to 1 year. The panel and Council can jointly make that recommendation, or the panel can ask the Minister to make an extension, but has to consult with Council before doing so. Council could also make a request, but we would have to consult with the independent hearings panel if we were to try to seek an additional time frame. These next couple of slides just give you a comparison between what we're doing currently in relation to the unitary plan and the usual Resource Management Act process, which some of you will be well aware of. So in many respects there are great similarities, but there are points of departure. The second box there refers to the time frame for submissions on the various plans. So with an RMA plan change or plan, it's 20 days after public notification. The public were given 60 working days to make submissions in relation to the unitary plan. Again, further submissions, there was an extended time, you'll see in the fourth box down there, 10 days normal process, 30 days in the context of the unitary plan. The last box there, the Council would normally appoint independent hearings commissioners to hold hearings. In this case, we have the Minister for the Environment and the Minister of Conservation appointing the independent hearings panel. Again, carrying on with this comparison, we have council hearings held normally and submitters are heard. In the port process, we have the independent hearings panel holding hearings and submissions. So in fact, there's not too much difference there to what we would normally do. The council in the normal process would make decisions on the submissions, and in the proposed Auckland Unitary Plan context, the council makes decision on recommendations of the IHP, accepting or rejecting each recommendation. And then we're required within a set time frame to publicly notify our decision. Normally, submitters, if they're dissatisfied with the council decision, can appeal. In the unitary plan context, the Environment Court appeal rights are limited to submitters appealing council decisions to reject recommendations, and any person appealing a council decision to accept a recommendation that is out of scope. So in some respects they're more narrow, but in other respects the ability to go to the Environment Court is wider in the unitary plan context. And I've just had a note to say, can we take a break after this?
Yeah,
About
it just
questions.
feels, yep, so we just, not a break, but just, we just thought
Good
that's a
stop.
logical place to stop and say questions up to there. Councillor
Well,
Wood.
just on that last slide, the appeal rights under the panel, yes, Environment Court appeal rights are limited to Submitters appealing council decisions to reject recommendations. So if we reject a recommendation, can someone then appeal it, who's been a submitter or anybody?
The first point there is that only a submitter can.
Submitter.
Yes, and that's to be compared with if council accepts a recommendation, appeal rights don't flow.